going?
Pretty good.
Good. Quick question. Do you guys have this looking packet?
No.
I don't. No.
No.
Okay. Let me see if I can share my screen so you guys can see the problems as well. I'm going to encourage you guys to be as active as you can, just because that helps with the learning. If you are kind of shy to talk over Zoom, don't worry. I'm honestly the same way. But if you want to talk and answer questions using the chat box, you are more than welcome to, okay? All right, are you guys all able to see that?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Have any of you guys had any experience with any kind of medication, math, or kind of dimensional analysis or any of that fun stuff?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I guess we will start off with the rounding exercises and rounding to the nearest tenth. Does everyone know how to do that, or does anyone know how to answer the first question for 1A?
3.1.
Yep. So when it does come to ending with that 0.05, when it's 5 and above, you do want to round up. If it's 4 and below, you round down. Easy enough. So of course, the next one you would want to do the 121 point, and then it would be the 2, just because it is a 6, and you want to round that up to 2. That one's simple enough. Do you guys want to keep going over these, or should we move past the rounding?
I think that makes sense.
We feeling good with the rounding? Anyone speak now, forever hold your peace. All right, and if you do have extra questions at the end, feel free to stay on and I could try to answer any questions about anything. Okay, military time. Does anyone have experience with military time? Yep, okay, cool. So one thing that I always like to remember is 12 p.m., so noon is going to be that 1200. Midnight will be 4 zeros. It's not going to be 2400, it's going to be all zeros. I know that one really confused me with med math. I was like, wait, is it 2400 or is it all zeros or what's going on here? But it will be all zeros. So with that first one, since it is 3 a.m., instead of adding that 12, you're going to just do the 0, 3, 1, 5 for 1315. I mean, 315. So it's going to be very easy with the AMs because you honestly just take away the dots in the middle and you take away the AMs and you just, that's your answer pretty much for anything in the morning. PM is when it starts getting a little bit, I don't want to say trickier, but it is a little bit more difficult. But my simple way of doing that is honestly just taking that front number and then adding it by 12, just because that's where you're adding from. So from 9:25 p.m., that would end up being 21:25, just because I did add that 12 to the 9. So does anyone want to answer, let's see, D?
Isn't it? Wouldn't it be 22:23?
Yep. So that would be honestly the simplest way of remembering military time. I know a lot of people, and when I went into 5, I personally set my phone to read just military time, so you get used to it kind of before med math. Just kind of trains your brain to kind of figure out what time it is. So moving down, we can do the converting from military time to civilian time. Does anyone want to try A?
Wouldn't it just be 4:22 a.m.?
Yes, ma'am, it would be. And then going on B, of course, instead of adding the 12, you're going to be subtracting the 12. So does anyone want to give that one a go?
10:15 p.m.
Yes, ma'am, it would be. All right. How are we feeling with military time? Is anyone confused? Need some extra ones? No, we're feeling pretty good. All right, cool. Sounds like this is going to be doing pretty well. Okay, this next one is kind of when you start applying everything. So my favorite way to approach a problem like this is to just kind of set it up. So I'm not sure if this is going to read backwards or not. Is that reading backwards for you guys? Perfect. So I would honestly take that bigger number of when it ended versus when it started. And that's when you get however many hours. Of course, it's not going to be 9.3 because let's say 16:30, 4 p.m. and then 700, of course, is going to be 7 a.m. It's going to be 30 minutes, but it's going to be that half hour. Just remember to keep that in your mind because I've known so many people mess that up on the exam. And then it just kind of messes them up. They're like, well, I knew it was a half hour, but instead of putting 0.5, I accidentally put the 0.3 kind of stuff. So that easiest way to kind of approach that is, of course, like I said, putting up that 16:30 and then putting 0700 for 7 o'clock in the morning. And then you just do the math of subtracting everything like that, which would end up being 9.5 hours, like that one right there. Does that make sense for everyone? Perfect. I'm seeing some nods. Perfect. So for the next one, before we start, what would 3:30 in military time be?
15:30.
Yes, ma'am. So of course, going from that, you're going to want to put that 15:30 over top of 1100. So does someone want to tell me how many hours it took for the IV to run?
Would it be 4.5?
Oops, sorry. Yeah, it'd be 4.5 hours. Hang on here a second. I'm going to let my dog out. Oh, just kidding. Here we go. Okay, sorry about that. Moving on, we're going to go to the patient is admitted at 600 on Monday morning and then is discharged at 800 the following morning. How many hours did that patient spend in the hospital? So of course, when you start at 6 o'clock in the morning on Monday, and it's going till 8 o'clock in the morning the next day, we already know that it went from 600 to 600 to Tuesday morning, kind of, you know what I'm saying there? So you're already spending 24 hours there. Plus the other 2 hours would make that the 26 hours. Does that sit well? I was like, I'm not really sure how you can mathematically like look at that, but I feel like explaining it is maybe a little bit better. That one's kind of one where you just kind of really have to read it, or else, like, honestly, if I would have been going through this quickly, I probably could have messed this up and been like, oh, they've been there for 2 hours, when I was like, but is anyone ever really there for 2 hours? Okay, conversion factors. So this is one that I'm going to honestly switch pages for. Can you guys see the MedMath tips? Cool. So if you guys wanted to get a picture of from Know Your Conversions, this whole from 1 gram to 100 milligrams, and then all the way down to the gallon equaling that many milliliters. I highly recommend looking at these conversions, and honestly, what I did to remember them is make flashcards, just because there are so many, where you'll be like in a MedMath exam and it's like, oh, you have 3 tablespoons of medication. How many milliliters is that? So you will have questions with like conversions. So I can be going between these two just for the next few, just because it is going to be dealing with the conversion problems, okay? Ooh, stuff is popping up and I can't move things around. Why is this so difficult? Okay, can you see the med math problems again? Perfect. Sorry, I am terrible with any kind of electronic stuff. Okay. So the conversion of which of the following in the conversion factors. So I honestly have a little trick for going from grams to milligrams, from milliliters to liters, all that fun stuff. And I like to call it kind of a rule of 3, but I can show you how to do it both ways. Because the long way, we have it down here of multiplying a bunch of different things, and it honestly takes longer. Where my favorite way is to honestly look at this problem and go from the 0.25 grams, and you got to know that grams is larger than that milligrams. And by just knowing that, almost everything that you're converting is going to be either 3 times smaller or 3 times larger. So when I look at this 0.25 grams, I'm like, okay, that's going to be bigger than the milligrams. And my way to do that is, okay, you need a larger number for milligrams for it to equal that grams. So if you take that decimal and you move it to the right 3, so 1 would be behind the 5, and then 2, 3, and fill up the zeros, you would end up getting 2,500 milligrams, which could be your answer. Let me see if I can draw this out for you. I feel like sometimes it's easier to kind of visualize it. So when I was talking about that, this is kind of what I'm talking about, how you take that decimal and you're going to move it over 3. Does that make sense? Okay. Or we could do it the longer way with the conversions. So the longer way, you're going to want to take that 2.5 grams and you just kind of have it on its own, just sitting there like that. And you're going to want to multiply that by the conversion factor. So the conversion factor is going to be, there's 1,000 milligrams in 1 gram. So the way you're going to write that out is you're going to write 1,000 milligrams, and you're going to put that 1,000 milligrams over 1 gram. So it's going to be written out kind of like right there. And going from that, you're just going to multiply across the top, which will give you the same answer of 2,500 milligrams. Does that make sense? Perfect. We can go on to the next one, which would be the 340 milliliters to 1 liter. So it's going to be super similar. You're just going the other way. So if you wanted, like I said, you could do the whole little moving the decimal, or you could go down and do it a completely different way, which would be putting that 340 milliliters. So you write that down, and then you write your multiplication symbol and do the conversion factor, which is going to be 1 liter over 1,000 milliliters, which would end up being your 0.34 milliliters, or whatever it wants you to round to. And a good way of remembering which one goes on top is you always want to be able to cross them out. This is kind of called, I think it's dimensional analysis, this kind of math is. So you see how up here you have your 300 milliliters, and then you put the liters on top because you want to be able to cross these out. And being able to cross those out, you have to have them diagonal from each other. Does that make sense? Perfect. You guys are probably going to be sick of me saying, does that make sense over and over, but. So does someone want to try? Well, okay. I can tell you guys what the conversion factor is for this next one. And does someone want to try calculating it? Okay. So you're going to have the 200 micrograms to milligrams. So there is going to be 1,000 micrograms in 1 milligram. Does someone want to try calculating that one out? So from the chat box, I am seeing that I've totally been neglecting this whole time because I forgot it was there. I'm seeing 0.2 milligrams, and that is correct. So it will be 0.2 milligrams per microgram. All right, moving on, we're going to do the kilograms to pounds. Now this one's not as easy to remember as the 1 to 1,000 ratio. So what this is going to be is there's going to be 2.2 pounds in every kilogram. So if we set this one up together, we're going to put that 2.5 kilograms, and then we're going to multiply that by 2.2 pounds over 1 kilogram. So when you multiply that together, you should be getting 5.5 pounds. So knowing that conversion factor, do you guys want to try doing the 220 pounds? I'm seeing 100 kilograms in the chat box, and that is correct. You guys are doing pretty well. I say it took me forever to figure out the whole like pounds to kilograms, and I was like, I don't know what's going on, but you guys are doing well here. So are we feeling okay on these conversion factors? Do we want to go over more? Okay. We will move on.
Real quick on I made a mistake on the micrograms to milligrams. So if we're doing the three times larger or 3 times smaller, I should have went left. Is that correct?
That
3
is-
times, and that would have given me the 0.2.
That is correct because the milligram is going to be bigger than a microgram.
Okay.
So in that case, the milligram number will be smaller.
Okay. Thank you.
One. Okay. Okay, so these conversion factors are not as fun. I am going to go through these ones just so you guys know what the conversion factors are going to be for this one. I'm also going to try to send these papers out for you guys as well. So the first one we're going to look at is going to be that 60 milliliters to ounces. So I'm going to tell you guys the conversion, and I want you guys to try to calculate it out, okay? So for 1 ounce, there's going to be 30 milliliters. Yep, I'm seeing 2 ounces, and 2 ounces is correct. I'll show you guys how I set that up again. So we do have the 60 milliliters, and of course you want to be able to cross it out. So we're going to put the conversion factor here, which will go to your 2 ounces. Okay, moving on. So we're going to look at B. So for every cup, there is going to be 240 milliliters. So I want you to figure out the 2 cups. Wonderful. Yep. 440 is going to be correct. And then if you guys want to go over the next 2, we can, or I can just tell you the conversion factors and you guys can write them down. What would you guys like to do?
Maybe just the conversion factors.
For sure. Okay. So for the next one, for 1 pint, there's going to be 2 cups, which in return, there's going to be 480 milliliters in a pint. And then for D, 1 tablespoon is going to equal 15 milliliters. All right. Moving on, we're going to be converting this to hours and minutes. So the best way to do this one is honestly, at the beginning, just completely forget the whole number at the beginning of the decimal, because that's just going to be your hours, just plain and simple. But the place that you want to get to is that 0.4 in the first one. So the way that I like to do this one is I like to write out 0.4 hours. And then I like to multiply that by its conversion factor of there is 60 minutes in 1 hour. And by doing that multiplication, you're able to find out that in 0.4 hours, there's going to be 24 minutes. And then moving on from there, you're able to add that 7 hours to get 7 hours and 24 minutes. And I'll show you guys how I set that one up. There we go. Sorry if my handwriting is terrible to read. I was like quickly doing this before I got on. Okay, does someone want to, do you guys want to try the 3.8 hours? And let me know how many hours and minutes there are. I'm seeing 3 hours and 48 minutes. If that's what you got, you're correct. Let's try one more. Let's do the 12 hours 0.33.
I have a question for the next one. Would you round it up or would you keep it how it is?
For the most part, you are going to want to round it up when it comes to minutes. For the most part, when you do come to the exam, it will tell you round to the nearest whole number, round to the nearest tenth. But when it is asking for hours and minutes, it's usually going to want you specifically to have a minute. So as you guys probably did the problem, it's ends up being 19.8 or something like that. You are going to round it up to 20 minutes. And it looks like everyone is getting at 12 hours and 20 minutes. All right, you guys feeling okay about these conversions? Perfect. All right, and this is when we get to the fun ones. Okay. So we are going to do, the PCP has ordered 80 milligrams of an intramuscular drug, which is available in 200 milligrams per milliliter. And then the part that I like to start this off on is this very last part. So it's going to say, how many milliliters will you administer? So I like to kind of remind myself of what needs to be on top and what needs to be on bottom. So when looking at this, you need to know that you need to have milliliters per dose is what you're looking for essentially in the end, is how many milliliters am I going to give them right now? So when I start this off, I always like to try to keep and get that very first thing, so which would be the milliliter at the top, and try to get that up top so I don't get rid of it. So I'm looking at the part where it says 200 milligrams per 1 milliliter. And that's what you're going to want to write down. It's going to be, this is what I have right now. So it's going to be 1 milliliter over 200 milligrams. So since I have that milligrams on the bottom, the next thing I'm going to want to put on top is that 80 milligrams. And to remind myself that I'm trying to find milliliters per dose, I like to put that number over dose, which would be set up kind of like this. So essentially you can look at this as I crossed out this 200 milligrams and I crossed out the 80 milligrams. Well, not the numbers, just the milligrams, which would end up going to pretty much 80 over 200, which would end up equaling 0.4 milliliters per dose. Does that one make sense to everyone? Does everyone know how I got there?
So when you're writing the answer on the exam, would you put dose after, like per dose after the milliliters always?
You could. They wouldn't mark you wrong. You just want to make sure that you do have your milliliters there. Because sometimes it'll say milliliters per dose. Sometimes it'll ask milliliters per day. As long as you have that per dose, you will, the milliliters, you'll be okay.
I have a quick question.
Of course. What's
Not
going on?
relating to the question, but is the test timed?
Yes. If I remember correctly, you get 20 questions and I believe you get 45 minutes.
Oh, okay, that's pretty fair. Thank you.
No problem. It is stressful, but just remember you do have 3 tries to pass it. A lot of people, it's stressful. Like a lot of people at the beginning of the semester are like, oh my gosh, I remember being in your guys' shoes and I was like all over. I was like, I'm so scared, but it's not as intimidating as people make it out to be. Like as long as you guys study and you know what you need to do, I think it's Miss Serva likes to say that you're over preparing yourself if you're practicing over and over and over. So as long as you know what you're doing, you should be okay. Like as long as these questions are making sense. Okay, let me see. So this next one that we have, so the nurse practitioner has ordered 80 milligrams by mouth once daily for a patient. The drug available is 40 milligram tablets. So this is the part I like to write. So how many tablets would they take each day? So I like to start it off as, I'm gonna remind myself that it's tabs per day. And I put my little equal sign just to remind myself exactly what I need to end up with. So starting with this, I like to always look at what drug I have available at the moment. So what I have is 40 milligram tablets. And knowing that I need to have tablets on top, I'm going to put 1 tablet over 40 milligrams. And then I'm going to multiply that by the 80 milligrams that I need to give a day. So how many tablets am I going to give a day?
2.
Yes, I'm seeing a lot of 2s, and you are correct. You're going to give 2 tabs a day. Okay. So your patient has an order for 250 milligrams IV every 6 hours of a drug that is available in 10 milliliter vials containing the 25 milligrams per milliliter. How many milliliters will be administered in 24 hours? There is a lot of numbers there, and there's a lot of numbers thrown in there just to kind of distract you from what you need to know. One of those numbers is going to be available in 10 milliliter vials. Oh my goodness, I cannot talk today. So that's a distracting number. You don't need the 10 milliliter vials in there whatsoever because it's not going to help you get to what you need to get to. But as we look at the end, you're going to want to put, of course, the milliliters over, you can put 24 hours, or I like to put 1 day. So milliliters over day. And of course, like I said, I always want to start off with what I have, which is going to be that 1 milliliter over 25 milligrams. Does anyone want to take a guess at what I'm going to write down next?
250 milligrams over a day.
Yep. And then within that one day, I have 4 doses. Wait, hang on here. I think I did that wrong, actually. I lied. You are actually going to want to put 1 dose instead of 1 day, just because you are trying to get rid of the doses. So you're going to multiply. All right, let me make sure I'm showing you the right one right here. So you're going to have the 1 milliliter over the 25 milligrams. Then you're going to have that 250 milligrams over 1 dose. Because then you're going to want to eventually know that there is going to be 4 doses because you're giving it every 6 hours for the next 24 hours. So you're going to want to put 4 doses over a day. Does that make sense?
Can you just show that one more time? I'm sorry.
Of course. Okay, so the way that you want to write this down, I'll do it step by step. So of course, you're starting off with your milliliters per day, because at the end it's asking how many milliliters will be administered within 24 hours. So knowing that I do have 1 milliliter over 25 milligrams, that's what I have available right now. What I want to be giving is 250 milligrams every 6 hours, but I'm going to put it over dose because you eventually figure out that you're going to have 6 times 4, that's going to be your 24 hours. So you're going to end up getting 4 doses. So you're using that 6 hours to figure out how many doses I'm going to give that day. Did that help at all?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. So sorry to confuse you guys on that one for a second. I was like, yeah, and I was like, wait, just kidding. So yeah, you're gonna end up giving 40 milliliters within that whole day. All right, moving on. These ones can be confusing. I don't think I even remembered learning these until semester 6, but we will go over them anyways. So when you see the whole GTT over milliliters, GTT is going to pretty much mean drops. So you know when you set up a bag of insulin, or, well, not insulin, oh my goodness, a bag of saline, and then you have the little spike that goes in and you see how it kind of drops. So you're going to have to be able to calculate how many drops you're letting through a minute to make sure that they're getting their saline over a good amount of time, or whatever is ordered. So that's what these problems are going to be. So we're going to say we're starting off with, there's going to be 500 milliliters infused over 6 hours with a drop factor of 20 drops per milliliter. So now we're going to try to figure out that drop factor. So we're going to start it off as GTTS over 1 minute. Well, over minutes. Because that's essentially what you're going to want to figure out is how many drops am I going to let through every minute. So I'm seeing that we need to start off with the 20 minutes. I mean, not 20 minutes, 20 drops. And I'm going to want to put that over the 1 milliliter. So I essentially like to look at that as, that's what I know I have, is that there's always going to be 20 drops per milliliter. So moving on, I'm going to want to get rid of the milliliters. Does anyone want to guess how we're going to do that?
Multiply 500 milliliters over, I just don't know what you'd put it over.
That's okay. You were right about the 500 milliliters. The next thing you're going to want to put it over is the 6 hours, because that's the next number that you do have. So we're going to put 6 hours there. But now we're going to try to get the hours to minutes. So does someone want to tell me how I'm going to get that to minutes?
1 hour over 60 minutes.
Yep, that's correct. So, and then you do, of course, all of your math. Do you guys want to tell me what you guys get for that? See if I can find the chat box. Oh, here we go. It keeps disappearing on me. And I will tell you guys to round this up to the nearest whole number. So, yep, so I'm seeing the 28 GTTs per minute. That is correct. Does anyone have any questions about how we got there?
I'm not sure how you got there.
For-
I'm a little.
No, we can go over it again. This one honestly took me a little bit to figure out when I learned this in semester 6. So I'll do this slowly. So of course we're looking here. We're looking for what the drop factor is. When it asks what a drop factor is, this is like not doing well. Let's see if this color will show up better. Okay. So you got your drops per minute, that one. By moving on, we see right here that we're going to have, we know for sure that we have 20 drops in every milliliter. So you want to be able to set that one up with the drops matching up so we don't delete that, okay? Moving on, the next thing we're going to want to get rid of is that milliliters. So we're going to put the 500 milliliters that are in the problem on top. And we know that those 500 milliliters, I keep going down to the wrong problem, that 500 milliliters needs to be infused over the 6 hours. So by knowing that, we know that we need to get to minutes. So we're going to try to get rid of that 6 hours by using our conversion factor of going to 1 hour over the 60 minutes. And then essentially what you can do is multiply across the top, multiply across the bottom, and then divide the two to get your answer of 28 drops per minute.
Thank you.
Of course. Did that kind of clear it up?
Yeah, it was the 1/60, the to get rid of the hours part that was got me kind of messed up.
No, there's always those little things that it's super easy to just forget about them sometimes. So moving on, I will have you guys walk me through this next one. So I'll start you guys off with, you're going to have drops per minute. Does someone want to tell me what I'm going to write down first down here? Do we know what our first one is going to be, or do you want me to walk through this one as well?
Wouldn't it be 10 drops per milliliter first?
That is correct. You're going to want to get those in there first. And if we're going based off of the last one, we're going to want to get rid of those milliliters. So of course, we're going to go to the beginning of the problem and write down those 1,000 milliliters, which is going to be infused over the 5 hours. Then of course, we want to get rid of those 5 hours by putting it the 1 hour over the 60 minutes. And then I'll have you guys multiply that and then give me the answer as a whole number. And I'll be watching the chat box. I'm seeing 33 drops per minute. That is correct. Okay. Does anyone have any questions about the drop factor questions at all? We feeling okay? I'll assume that's a yes. Okay, we're gonna move on to the I's and O's. So these questions, I think it's actually just the one I and O question. This one is specifically all for the intake that we're going to be calculating for a patient. So remembering these conversion factors, can someone tell me how many milliliters are going to be in those 12 ounces of water? I mean 20 ounces. Did I say 12? I meant 20.
30 milliliters per 1 ounce.
Yep, there's 30 milliliters per ounce. Does someone know how many milliliters in 20 ounces of water? Yep, there's going to be the 600 milliliters in that cup of water. So how I would do this is I would put the 20 times 30 next to it and then put my answer and just essentially have them all lined up so I can easily add them when I'm done. I think I did this one wrong when I was doing this earlier. So for the next one, there's going to be a cup of broth. Does anyone remember how many milliliters is in a cup? Yep, 240 is correct. I see that in the chat box. So essentially I would put that under the 600 milliliters. Moving on, we're going to go to the 12 ounces of soda. So since you are still intaking that fluid, even though it is not water, it's still going to be included on our intake. So can someone tell me how many milliliters are in 12 ounces?
360.
Yep, that is correct. After that, the 10 ounces of juice, how many milliliters would that be? I'm seeing 300. That is correct. Okay, for this next one, this is where sometimes it gets a little dicey. When you see ice, the rule of thumb when you're doing intakes and outputs is you're going to cut the number in half, because when you do have 8 ounces of ice, essentially it's going to melt down and it's going to be less than how much it actually is. So when we calculate 8 ounces of ice, we're going to cut it in half and say that it is 4 ounces of fluid. So can someone tell me how many milliliters that would be?
120.
That is correct. So then at the end, you want to add up the 600, the 240, the 360, the 300, and the 120. If I did my calculations correct, it should be 1,620 milliliters. Is that what everyone else was getting? Cool. I actually didn't get it wrong for once. All right. Does anyone have questions about that I's and O question? Perfect. We will move on here. Okay, we're going to go on to this one. A 7-year-old who is a 50-pound child with acute otitis media is to receive an oral amoxicillin, which is going to be 80 milligrams per kilogram per day, which is going to be divided into every 12 hours. So how many doses per day would we be giving this? 2. Yep, that's right. The amoxicillin is available in a 25 milliliter bottle containing 400 milligrams per milliliter. How many milliliters would you administer per dose? Okay, we will write this one out together. So I know for sure that there is one distracting, there is a single distracting number in there. Does anyone know what that one would be?
Is it the 75 milliliter bottle?
Yep. So that 75 milliliter bottle is going to be a number that we do not need to use whatsoever. So when we set this up, we're going to put it with milliliters per dose. So we're going to start off with doing, of course, the milliliters per dose that we know that we do have for sure, which we're going to put the 5 milliliters over 400 milligrams. Is everyone with me so far? Perfect. Moving on, we're going to want to look at this part of the equation right here. Of course, because we want to get rid of our milligrams, we're going to put 80 milligrams on top. And then I like to write every 1 kilogram. And then if you want, you can put per day. It confuses me when I put per day, so I usually just put the 1 kilogram. So we're going to multiply that 1 kilogram out of the equation by putting 1 kilogram equals 2.2 pounds. Does everyone remember that conversion factor? Wonderful. And of course, you're going to want to get rid of the pounds again. So you are going to put 50 pounds. And since you still haven't really gotten rid of the day yet, I usually just kind of put a 1 there. But essentially, you know that you have 1 day worth of medications here because you did write the 80 kilograms per day. That means that we're calculating the whole medication dose per day. Does that make sense? So at the end of the equation, you're going to want to put 1 day is over 2 doses because we haven't gotten our dose factor into there yet. Did I lose anyone yet? Are we doing okay? Perfect. I'm seeing some thumbs up. Okay. So when you do calculate that out, it should equal about 11.36 milliliters. Did that make sense to everyone, or do you guys want me to re-walk through this at all?
Would you be able to go through it again, please?
Of course, I could do that. Okay, so we're going to start back at the beginning again here. Let me just write this in here quick. Okay. So we have the milliliters per dose over here, okay? So we know that we for sure have that 5 milliliters over the 400 milligrams. That is something that we are certain of, and this is what we do have. But of course, we're going to want to get rid of this milligrams. So we're going to go back up to what we need to give this child. So he is going to need to have 80 milligrams, and that's going to be for every kilogram per day. So you're going to put 2 conversions at the bottom because you still need to get rid of both of those, whatever you want to call them at the end, the kilograms, and you want to get rid of the days. Okay, let me see where I'm at. Okay. So first thing we're going to try to get rid of is the kilograms. So if we put the kilograms at the top, we're going to put 1 kilogram is equal to the 2.2 pounds, which is going to be an important conversion factor to remember for these types of problems. So essentially, because I have kilograms on the bottom here, I want to get rid of it. But now I have pounds on the bottom, and I'm going to want to get rid of the pounds because that doesn't end up over here. I'm trying to see if I can figure out. Okay. So we're going to put that 50, the 50 pounds. And then I just like to throw it over one because there's really nothing else you can really throw it over. Because the next thing you're going to focus on trying to get rid of is the days here. So then I like to put the 1 day over the 2 doses, and that would be the end of the problem. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
No problem. I know that whole part where it's kind of like you have the 50 pounds and then you have nothing to throw it over is super confusing. So just to fill up the space, I like to kind of get rid of the whole space and just kind of put a 1 down there.
What was the answer for that question?
The answer, if I am correct, it would be 11.36 milliliters per a dose.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. One way that you can always try to kind of make this a little bit quicker is you could convert the pounds to kilograms right away. Because if you were to convert the pounds to kilograms right away, you would get rid of this whole step here. And as well as that, because you would have the 20, what was the kilograms? 22.7 kilograms there. So if you wanted to do that beforehand, you wouldn't have to deal with the pounds and the conversion, if that makes sense. Does everyone feel okay on number 17? Perfect. All right, I'm gonna have you guys try to help me walk through this one, okay? So it's going to be a 155-pound patient is to receive a single IV dose of some medication that you'll learn in, I want to say that that's a psychiatric med. I could be completely wrong. No, that's not a psychiatric med. It's some kind of medication. That's all we know. And it's going to be 0.5 milligrams per kilogram, which is for prevention of nausea and vomiting. So I was wrong. So this medication is available in 20 milliliters of the 2 milligrams per milliliter. How many milliliters will you administer? Okay, looking straight at this, can you guys tell me what number is going to be a distracting number in this problem?
Is it the 20 ml MDV?
Yes, that is correct. So this, that whole part is going to be completely irrelevant to the problem. So the way that we're going to set this up is like we usually set it up as milliliters per dose. Does someone want to tell me what the first thing I'm going to write down is?
One milliliter over 2 milligrams.
Yep, that is correct. Because you want to start off with that very top. So the milliliters and the milliliters, you kind of want to make them match up at the beginning. So moving on, we're going to want to try to get rid of the milligrams. Does someone want to take a stab at what the next one's going to be?
Would it be the 0.15?
Yep. So you're going to have the 0.15 milligram over 1 kilogram, because that's another thing that you know that you need to convert. Moving on, we're going to go into our conversion factor. Of course, you're going to want to put the 1 kilogram over the 2.2 pounds. Which then you're going to essentially want to go back to the 155 pounds. And the last thing that you can really put underneath is dose. It doesn't really make sense, but I always like to write dose just to know that that's where I'm finishing the problem. So when you calculate that, what do you guys get? Yeah, I believe you're right, Zoe. I converted it right away to tenths, so I believe that that is correct. And that's the end of those problems. Does anyone have any questions right off the bat before we log off here?
Is there any way you could email a copy of this? I don't know if that'd be really difficult though.
I could definitely try if everyone were to email their put their emails into the chat box, and I can try to get everyone down to try to email it to you guys.
In the other workshop that I did, she sent her email and then we just emailed her so she didn't have to write down each of our emails if that's easier.
That does sound smarter. I'll put that down.
Okay, thank you.
Much.
No problem. And this email is going to be of course, my school email. If you guys ever have any other questions, I do tutoring through the school. I believe I tutor both classes for semester 5. So if you guys have any questions throughout the semester, do feel free to reach out to me. So if you do want this sheet, please do send me an email and I can get these sheets out to you. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
No problem. If you guys don't have any other questions, feel free to log off. If you do, I will stay on here for a few minutes.
I have a question. So when do we take this exam? Like you said semester 5?
Yes. So you have, from my knowledge, you have one both at semester 5 and semester 6. I want to say that this exam is about approximately 2 to 4 weeks into your semester that you would take this exam. And that there is a makeup every week. There's 3 makeups that you can do just in case you don't pass the first one. You have 3 chances to get them, and it's 1 week after another.
Okay, thank you so much.
No problem. If you guys ever do want any more practice problems, I recommend Googling, what's it called? nurselabs.com. If you look up Nurse Labs med math questions, you'll be able to find some as well if you wanted to look up extra questions to practice.
Thank you.
No problem. Have a good rest of your night, guys, and have a happy holiday. Thank you.